All right, here we go. Video number 6. All right, now at this point, before I get into my preview, I'm just going to leave this up here for the remaining videos. So anytime you need to access a worksheet, document, go here, and hopefully you'll become familiar with that site. I may use it a little bit more as time passes. Oh, forgot to start my stopwatch. But we'll see about that. But at least for the unit conversion topic, this is where all your practice work will be. Okay, so kind of reviewing at the end of our video last time. The most important thing that you need to remember from the last video is that word. And that when you are doing a unit conversion, when you are setting up your magic H's, which are basically just places with a numerator and a denominator that take on this form, you are going to put a conversion factor of some sort in that magic H, but in order to put the right thing in the right place, you have to have the unit that's going to cancel has to be diagonal from the one that you're starting with. And hopefully with practice, this will just become second nature to you. Now last time, we explained to you how to go about doing what I call level 1 unit conversions. So today's lecture, the big deal is, let's move on to level 2 units. Now in order to discuss level 2 units, first I'm going to show you just a generic structure of what they look like, and then I'm going to throw some verbiage at you because this brings up kind of a different category of unit compared to the level 1. The one thing about level 2 units, and it goes perfectly with the fact that we use a number 2 here, is that a level 2 unit structure is actually 2 separate units that somehow have been combined through the mathematics of multiplication or division. So one basic structure of a level 2 unit would be some unit A times some unit B. Now, the one that I can think of that some people, I think most people are not familiar with this, but if you're into mechanical stuff, you may have heard of this before. And it's more of in terms of English units, in terms of how people are familiar with it, there is a unit called a foot-pound. And this is a unit, technically, of what they call torque, about when you tighten stuff. But this literally means that you are taking a length unit and multiplying it by a force unit. So this is an example of this type of unit. A second type of level 2 unit is one where you are taking 2 units and you are combining them through division. Now the classic example for this one that everybody would be familiar with, and again we're going to work from English units because they're the ones that people would have most familiarity with, would be miles over hours, and most people would refer to this as miles per hour whenever you have a fraction bar in a unit. That is where you would insert the word per. And any unit that you're familiar with where it says one thing per another thing, that per, if you were going to write out the unit, is where you would put the horizontal fraction bar. Now, one thing about this structure, some people, when they write these types of units here, they will use, what am I doing, 6-4. They will use the slash instead of the vertical. I am going to highly discourage you from doing that, because when you write units that have a fractional nature to them in this form, people frequently forget that one is in the numerator and the second one is in the denominator. And because they're both at the same level, they think they're both in the numerator, so when they start to do their diagonal thing in the unit conversion, they get stuff flipped inappropriately and they get the wrong answer. So I highly discourage that. Okay, so that's a second type of unit. Now the third type of unit is, again, one that you're probably familiar with, but it is where you have a single unit and it is being raised to an exponent. We're not going to go crazy with the exponents here. So the exponents most frequently that you will see in this class will be either a squaring or a cubing. So that's why I put the 2 or the 3 there. So this would be a single unit, but it is being combined technically because this means what you've done is you've taken A times itself, or you've done it 3 times depending on where this final number came from. And as far as examples go, probably, again, going with English units, the 2 most common examples of this would be feet squared, which most people, when they see it, will refer to it as square feet, or feet cubed, or cubic feet. Sometimes people are familiar with this with either inches or centimeters if they're really into cars, because it's a way that they measure kind of like how big your engine is. Okay, so these are the 3 different types of styles of level 2 units. Now, this is where I'm going to bring up a couple terms, because all of these units, because you have 2 or more units that are somehow being combined, these are referred to as derived units.
What's going on, Panovich?
Oh, hey, we got a visitor, people. So that means we're going to have to stop and bring our visitor in. And this will happen regularly even during the school year. So just be prepared for this.
This is like Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood.
It is. For those of you, I can't imagine anybody out there doesn't know.
Obviously, people don't know. Obviously.
Mr. Bollicky.
Thank you. Thank you. What are we learning today?
Today we are doing unit conversions.
Yeah.
And last video we did level 1. So we are going up a rung in difficulty, and we're dealing with level 2 units. Super exciting.
How many do you think are actually watching right now?
Well, based on the videos that I've already posted,
Yeah.
not a whole lot.
Okay.
So we'll
very
see.
small.
There's still a month left.
It's a very small audience, right?
Yes.
You should give them a
I'm
trick question when they come in and say, hey, what did Mr. Bollicky say when he came in and interrupted the video?
Okay. So
Okay.
what are you going to say?
I'm going to say, here it is, the key one. Hey, Mr. Panovich, I finished my video on momentum. And your trick question could be, what was Mr. Bollicky's video on?
Bingo.
All right.
I'm going to remember that. And of course, you'll have to remind me to
What do you-
refresh people's memory.
It's
as
on
well.
film.
You think I watch my own videos?
Probably not.
I'm not even
All right.
one of the people watching this, so hopefully you guys are.
All right. Bye.
All right.
Enjoy.
Great to see you.
Yeah.
Okay. So, we were right at the point where we discussed this new category of units that we call derived units, which is one where you take 2 or more, because as I mentioned before, I have level 3 and level 4 difficulty units. They're more difficult because they're just more, there's going to be more in the structure, but they would still fall under the category of derived units. Now, if we went back and we talked about level 1, a level 1 unit, in terms of how I've done this today, would just be a single thing. That type of unit is referred to as a fundamental unit, because it is just a single thing. A length, a time, a mass, a volume, that's it. But here, because there's more than one of those fundamental units, You know, when someone asks, well, what is that? It's actually 2 units that are just combined. Now, if you understand what that unit represents, then you could say something, for example, with square feet, oh, well, that represents an area. Or in the case of miles per hour, oh, that represents a speed or a velocity. And if you really understood this one here, you'd say, oh, that represents torque. But the real units for torque are the foot-pound, and the real units for velocity are miles per hour or meters per second. We'll find when we do our metric stuff, we prefer to have things in meters, kilograms, and seconds, but that's not going to be part of the unit conversions. Now, I will also tell you that as you do your problems on the worksheets for the level 1, level 2, level 3, and level 4 unit conversions, don't try and make sense of what do the units represent, because I have made a chaotic mess of metric prefixes and what fundamental units I have put into a given unit structure. So a lot of my units, I would just call them nonsense units, because the purpose is not about do you know what that unit represents, but can you perform the unit conversion to take it from one set of units to another. Okay, so 2 terms that you can remember here, a fundamental unit versus a derived unit. Okay, so now we need to do some practice. So we are going to look at a couple problems. I'm at 11 minutes. I think I can knock out 3 in this 20 minutes. We are going to look at a few problems from the level 2 worksheet, which remember is at this website, and you go to the Honors Physics folder, then the Conversion Worksheet subfolder, and you look for level 2. So we are going to start by looking at number 2. Now, in order to do this, I am going to make use of my colors. I love doing stuff with colors. So, here is problem 2. It says 3.59 e negative 2, and then we have m times cs, and we are converting that to this. So again, if you ask, this is meters, this is centiseconds, so this would be meters times centiseconds, this would be inches times hours. Now, in order to perform this conversion, the big principle that you have to be comfortable with is there are 2 things that we have to convert in order to complete this problem, but we cannot attack them at the same time. We can only attack one unit at a time, and while we are attacking that unit, we basically ignore or suspend any operation with the other unit. So if you've ever heard of the phrasing of, I can chew gum and walk at the same time, well, when you're doing this, you're not allowed to do both of those at the same time. If you're walking, you don't worry about chewing. And if you want to chew, then you have to stop walking so you can pick up the chewing. So let's start this, and hopefully this will make more sense once you see an example. So I'm going to start in black with the value. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to color code each of these. So I'm going to use the length unit here in green, and I'll use black for that. And I'm going to use orange for the time unit. And then what we want to do is we want to convert this so in the end we have inches times hours. Now the beautiful part here is you can choose to start with whatever one you want. Most people, because we read from left to right, and we read from top to bottom, when I ask people, what do you want to start with? They would usually say, well, let's just start with the first one in the unit. So that's fine. So let's say we start with the meter here. That means in order to get this thing going, I have to introduce a magic H to get the ball rolling. Now, when it comes to converting meters to inches, if you knew how many inches there were in a meter, what the relationship was between the two, you could do this in one step. Most people don't know that. I do know the number, but I'm not going to cough it up here. And so what most people would say is, look, I remember how to go the value for meters to feet, and then I can go from feet to inches. So, actually, to make this match even better, let's do this in green. So that means in the very first magic H, I'm going to have meters and feet in here. But remember, the key word is diagonal. I need this meter to go away. And because the meter is in the numerator, because it's not underneath a fraction bar, that means the meter has to go down here in the denominator in my magic H. Now, I can put whatever I knew how to convert this to on the other side. In this case, we are doing feet. So I'm going to put the feet there. Now, this is where some people map out the entire conversion and then go back and put in numbers. Some people like to put the numbers in as they're doing it. So I'm going to go with that. So now I need to put a relationship between feet and meters in here. And remember, there are a couple different ones. I'm just going to choose one. 1 foot is 0.305 meters. So at this point, that meter and that meter have canceled, but I'm not where I want to be yet because I want to get to inches. That means I need to tack on another magic H here. But this time, I'm going between the feet and the inches, and so that means I need the units feet and inches here, but I need to put them in the right place. I need feet to go away, so that means because it's in the numerator here, it needs to go in the denominator here. And that means that the other side will have my inches. And our relationship here is 12 inches and 1 foot. So now feet have canceled, and I got my inch unit, which is what I want in my answer, so I'm good. So I've chewed my gum, but I haven't walked yet. So now it's time to stop chewing the gum and going ahead and walking. And that means we come back to centiseconds here. So in order to map this out, I need to go from centiseconds to hours. Now, if you knew that relationship off the top of your head, you could go ahead and do it in one step. I don't think most people know that, but because we have the centi here, we can go from centisecond to second using our understanding of metric prefixes, and then we can go from seconds to hours. So that means we're going to need 2 steps just like we did here in green, but now we're in orange. So I need another magic H. This time it's orange because now I am ignoring the meter and I'm focusing on the centisecond. Now the centisecond was in the numerator just like the meter. And that means to go between centiseconds and seconds, they would have to be arranged like this. Now this is where the conversion factor involves you being able to do the metric prefix conversion factor that we talked about. Centi is -2. Second, because it doesn't have a prefix, is 0. So that means between these two, the bigger one is the second. So that gets the 1, at least the way I will normally do this, and the other side gets the E. And I take this one minus this one, or I could just think about how far apart are 0 and -2 on a number line and put that as a positive number, and that would be 2. And that centisecond here cancels this one here, so I'm at second. Now I'm not where I want to be yet. I need to get to hours. So that means the next thing that I need to do would be to go between seconds and hours. But again, keyword diagonal. This second needs to get canceled out, so it needs to be diagonal, so it needs to be on the bottom. And I could convert it to whatever I want. I remember this. Some people go seconds to minutes and then minutes to seconds. That requires one more magic H. But if you remember this relationship, this is just one that you would have to know in your head. 1 hour is 3,600 seconds. And then these seconds cancel. There's my H. And now I have inches and hours on top. They're being multiplied. There's my answer. So now when I come back and I go, all right, well, how do I calculate the value of my answer? I'm going to start with this number, and then in this very first magic H, because it's 1 over a number, that means I would divide by 0.305. And then the next one over is 12 over 1, which means multiplied by 12. When I go to the next one, I have 1 over E2. So that means I divide by E2. And then I have 1 over 3,600. So that means divide by 3,600. And when we go ahead and do that, we get 3.59 E negative 2. We divide by 0.305 times 12, divide by E2, and divide by 3,600, and we get an answer of 3.92 E negative 6. Checking my answer here. The answer on the worksheet says 3.93 E negative 6, and that, I think that is because when I did the key, I didn't do 1 over 0.305, I did 3.28 over 1. I believe I mentioned this earlier, that when you look at the answer, if your first 2 digits match, you're good. The third digit can be a little wiggly depending on the particular conversion factors you use. And then your power of 10, your E value, that has to be identical, which in this case it is. And then my units would be inches times hours. Okay? So, that is how you do a level 2 conversion that has that structure of A times B. So what I'm going to do next is I'm going to do an example where it's not A times B, it's A over B, and then we'll call it quits for this video, and then the following one will show you how to handle exponents. All right, so I am going to erase this. And we are going to choose a different problem now. And that different problem, I'll tell you what, just so I can post them separately. I'm going to stop this video. We'll call this 6, and I'll call the next one 6A, because I'm going to do 2 samples in the next video, so it's going to pick up exactly where we are right now, so these will be 2 that are a little bit shorter. Okay, we'll be back in just a moment.